This is the lab setup in preparation for the Microsoft official academic course supporting Windows 8.1 in preparation for exam 70-688. So before we can start any one of these labs, we have to complete the lab setup. And I've already downloaded it, but you can find this along with a lot of other good information on the Wiley. So this is the Wiley website, and if you just put in the search term for the exam number, 70-688, enter. This is the one we're going to be working on. If you click the drop down arrow here, you can go down to, anyone can go into the student's companion site. So if I click on here, I can do a browse by chapter, browse by resource, as well as a table of contents. And I thought there was a lab setup guide on this, but I guess not. So here you're going to have the lab workup, the lab work. The lab manual workup sheets, and if you download them, go ahead and open one of them. Enable editing. This will walk through all of the questions. This gives you the question, just the question numbers that are found within the lab. And as we go through this, it even tells you where you have to, where you're supposed to be doing your screenshots. However, if you're one of my students taking my hybrid course, you do not need to do those screenshots except at the end, before the lab challenge. Okay, so let's get started with the lab setup. There's quite a few things that we have to do, and this is going to be based off utilizing HyperV to contain the entire network. When I say the entire network, there are multiple machines we're going to be utilizing. Okay. First, you need to have, in order to run this series of labs, you have to have a minimum of 16 gig of RAM and 1 terabit hard drive. If you do not have 16 gig of RAM, you're going to have a real tough time working through some of these steps that involve working with multiple machines simultaneously. Even with 16 gig, you're going to see a significant slowdown once we get into the later labs that require all these machines to be on. So those are the requirements. And that's actually one of the reasons why some instructors who are teaching this choose to utilize the MOAC labs that are online, the virtual labs that are online. This way you don't have to have all those requirements. Okay, some of these I've highlighted because I had already had them, and I since have already gotten the rest of them. So you are going to need Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 standard, and this can be the ISO. And what I like about this is it gives you the location of where you can get these files. You're also going to need Microsoft Windows 8.1 Enterprise, Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, or the ADK for Windows 8.1, the Desktop Optimization Pack 2013 R2, the administrative templates for Windows 8.1 and Server 2012 R2, the Remote Server Administration Tools, Microsoft Office 2010 Filter Packs, Service Pack 1 for Office Filter Pack 2010. And there's several required pieces that are going to be needed for all of these labs. Eventually get down to the PowerPoint viewer, test PowerPoint presentation. I've had a hard time trying to find this, but this is just a general PPT file. And when we get to this point, I'll show you how to create a test one just for purposes of creating a lab. So we're going to continue to scroll down Now this first set of setup instructions walks you through if you're doing this through a live lab where you have students that each have their own server and Windows 8.1 machines, and the instructor has the main RWDC, and that's what this first set of instructions goes over. The next thing you're going to need to have is, if you're going to work through these labs, is HyperV. Now I have Windows 8.1 Pro. Go ahead and minimize this for a minute, and I'm going to close out of this, and I'll minimize this. So to access 8.1 Pro, to access HyperV, if you right-click your Windows icon and go up into Programs and Features, and then select Turn Windows Features On or Off, you'll notice that I have HyperV already checkmarked. If you don't have it selected or installed yet, you'll need to install it, and it'll require a restart on your machine. Now, if some of this is grayed out, then what you're going to have to do is go into your BIOS and allow for the virtual machines. And I'm sure there's several other videos that walk you through that. I don't have the time to do that through these set of videos. The main objective of these videos is to walk through these labs. All right, so I've already gotten HyperV installed, and I've actually already have HyperV on, and I've added to my taskbar. So how do you do that? From here, if you do a search and type in Hyper, you'll see the HyperV Manager. All you have to do is right-click and pin to taskbar. Once you do that, you'll be able to open it from your taskbar, and it's very, very easy. The next thing we want to look at is some basic housekeeping. I'm going to go to my Virtual Switch Manager, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this one just so I can add it back. I'll show you how to do that. Then OK. So I'm going to go back to my Virtual Switch Manager. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an internal switch. So we're going to select internal, create virtual switch, and we're going to call this Contoso_INT, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put in the exam number, or no, the course number for this is CTS 2153. And you don't necessarily need to put in the course number that this is for. I put this in just to help me keep track of what machines that I'm working on with which classes, because sometimes I teach multiple classes at the same time, and they all utilize HyperV. And then I'm going to go ahead and do OK. So now I have just my internal switch, and I'll set up my external. We're going to need an external switch. We're going to set that up later. The next thing you're going to do, again, under housekeeping, is I'm going to open up my Windows Explorer, go to my C drive, and you'll see that I have a folder already created for hard disks, one for software, and one for virtual machines. So you're going to want to make sure you have each of these created within this folder. Once you do that, we're going to go into our HyperV settings. And you'll see I've already got it selected to go to hard disks here, but you can click on Browse to find that. And then Machines, I'm going to browse because I've changed it. C. I'm going to put it here and then select folder. So now it's going to go to this folder. Actually, I can just do it this way. And it'll actually create a folder called Virtual Machines. And then OK. All right, the next step is to create our RWDC. So I'm going to left click, right click, New, Virtual Machine. This is going to be RWDC01, and again I'm going to put in the course code 53, and you'll see that I've already got it selected I could check this box if I want to store it in a different location, but it's already going to the correct location, so I'm going to click on Next. We're going to let it default to Generation 1, and then Next. Alright, here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and this has been more of practice than what it actually says in the lab guide. I'm going to put in 2096 here, and then use dynamic memory. And then next, the connection, I'm going to go ahead and connect to the internal, and then next. And here we're going to assign 80 gig. Again, this is not necessarily what it says in the lab guide, but this will actually help speed up some of the processes that we do within the RWDC. And then next. And now we're going to install from an ISO, and then browse. And I have the ISO already in the folder. And then open. And then next. Now you can get your Windows Server or Windows 8.1. If you are taking this as part of a class, a lot of schools have agreements with Microsoft Imagine, which was formerly DreamSpark. And if you ask for a sign-on, I'm sure your instructor will be happy to find that for you and get you set up with your DreamSpark or now Microsoft Imagine. And you'll be able to download your own ISO and have your own individual license key. Okay, we're going to go ahead and click on Finish. And then I'm going to double-click here and then start my machine. And then minimize this. And I'm going to close out of this for now. Let it load the files. And this is probably one of the longest videos that I end up having to do within these series. I try to break the videos down into individual exercises just because it's easier, but I wasn't sure how to break this one up. We're going to click on Next and then Install Now. And now I'm going to put in my license key. I'm going to pause the video, put in my license, click on Next, and then I'll resume the video. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and select the server with GUI. From a learning perspective, it's good to go with the GUI because it's what we're used to. If we were focusing more on command line interface, at that point we would be looking at the server core. But this is more of a foundational course, learning the basics of Server 2012 and how it relates to the network and the different components of that network. But in upper level classes, you may be working with the server core. And the server core is basically just your command line interface. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And then Accept. And then Next. You can do a custom, which is a fresh install. And then Next. Now, one of the reasons that I choose to use HyperV instead of making my students go online is that we run into a whole host of connectivity issues through some of these labs, and we have to problem solve them. Problem solving is very important in any industry, especially if you're going to be trying to get into the IT and doing IT help desk. You have to know how to problem solve efficiently, and that's one of the reasons why I really focus on utilizing HyperV as a medium for teaching many of these courses. And you'll see most of my videos, I utilize HyperV for the lab walkthroughs. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this works through its installation process, and as soon as it gets to the next step, I'll go ahead and resume the video. Okay, so now we're going to put in the password. And this is the password we're going to be using throughout all of the exercises. So it's capital P, little a, $, W0RD. And then finish. Now, of course, in the real world, you don't want to ever use the same password for everything. But for simplicity, we're just going to create the same password. I'm going to go ahead and pause while it finalizes the settings and then resume once it's started. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and click on this little command button up here. This is our Control-Alt-Delete. We're going to put in the password that we created. Alright, now that my virtual machine has come up, I've got my server manager that automatically came up. There's a couple things we're going to do here before we can do too much, and that's go into local server. And we're going to click on the time zone. And I'm on the Eastern, so I'm going to change that to Eastern. And then OK. And then OK again. Oops. And then the next thing we want to do is go into our IP addressing. And I'm just waiting for it to come all the way up. There it is. Oops. Alright, so we're going to click on Ethernet. And again, you don't necessarily have to click here in order to get to where we're going. You can also right click and go here. So we're going to left click, right click, properties, select IPv4, properties, and we're going to use the following IP address. Now, if you have a separate keyboard on your keypad on your keyboard for numbers, you're going to need to turn on your num lock. Otherwise, you're just going to click on a space. So we're going to assign the RWDC is 192.168.1.50. Then you're going to tab, and then we're going to come down to DNS, preferred DNS server, and put in that same IP address, 192.168.1.50. And then go ahead and do OK. And then close. And then we're going to close out of this. The next thing we're going to do is click on the computer name. And we're going to change the computer name to the RWDC. And as soon as we do that, it's going to make us reboot. And then OK. And then OK. I'll close this. And I'm going to go ahead and let it restart now. And I'm going to end the video here just to keep these videos relatively short. In the next video, we're going to look at installing the Active Directory and DNS.